And now let's shift focus to our big story at 7 p.m. The big focus at this hour is on the issue of underutilization of state funds in the higher education sector. The government's response in Parliament about higher education reveals that 40% of the budget allocated for higher education has gone unutilized, whether it is with regards to recruitment or investment to better prospects of higher education. The funds have remained unutilized, and in fact the government had allocated 93,000 crore for overall education budget, out of which approximately 56,000 crore has been used. That roughly works out to 40% of unutilized funds. On the other hand, for central universities, only the unspent balance, just the unspent balance, stood at 7,000 crore. That's the kind of funds just lying there, not being used for any productive purpose. A sharp increase, of course, from the earlier figure of 355 crore in 2019. This year, the unutilized funds even more. 34% of the faculty seats in central universities lying vacant, most of them in top educational institutions like Delhi University, University of Allahabad, Banaras University and Aligarh Muslim University. These are all highly prestigious universities in the country where there are vacancies, and these vacancies are not being filled. The big question that we are, of course, going to raise here on the program is that, is it because of a sense of misplaced priority? Is higher education not getting the kind of focus that it should? This is an issue that concerns our youth, and therefore this is a question that we must raise today. Remember, the government responses in Parliament have consistently showed underutilization of budgeted funds. Yes, of course, we do hear, in fact, even today we did hear the FM saying a lot of issues of unutilized funds is happening because of pandemic-induced difficulty. But we need to discuss this issue of why allocated funds are underutilized, what are the lacunae in the current system of higher education. In fact, we'll have an expert panel joining us. I will be joined by Dr. A.D. Sawant, former VC of the University of Rajasthan, and also Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, Secretary, Global Media Education Council, who's with us. And in fact, both the gentlemen are with us. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. I'll come across to you. Let me first go to my colleague Charlene in the Mumbai newsroom to take us through the facts and figures so that we get a full context of this. Charlene?
That's right, Afrida. In fact, let me first once again take our viewers through these facts and figures that are, sort of concerning. Remember, the education budget, according to this budget, 93,000 crore rupees were allocated for, for universities to spend on education, of which 56,000 crore were utilized, which means a whopping 40% was still unused. Apart from this, also let me take you through the funds that were unutilized, where in 2021, 7,143 crore of funds were unutilized. Remember, 93,000 crore was allocated as per the education budget, and of which the central universities failed to use 7,000 crore of that allocated amount, which again is a sharp rise from 2020 and even the previous year 2019 that saw only 355 and 274 crore of unutilized budget respectively, and that's 7,000 in 2021. Apart from that, let me take you through the numbers of vacant faculty posts in central universities. Now, central universities, I'm talking about premier university like Delhi University. All such universities have at least 19,000 posts, sanctioned posts ranging from teaching to administration, of which around 34,000, which is 6,535 posts in the educational field in such premier universities are still lying vacant. In fact, let me take you through the last of these numbers, which are these universities where funds are unutilized, where posts are vacant. You can see Delhi University, Allahabad University, Banaras Hindu University and Aligarh Muslim University, each of them, DU having 859 vacancies, Allahabad 611, Banaras having 499 and Aligarh Muslim University having 359 vacancies, and all of them are yet to be filled. So you can see, sort of this gap where the vacancies are also there. They're yet to be filled. At the same time, you have 40% of the funds that are part of the 93,000 crore allocated education budget that's still to be utilized. Back to you.
Us and giving us that clarity. Let me first go across to you, Dr. Sawant. Very good evening. As somebody who's an insider in this system, help us understand how is this happening? This is a huge luxury to get, from a layman's perspective, to get this kind of funds, and it's just lying there unused. What is the reason for that, sir?
Reason for not utilization of funds is because, first of all, the departmental posts, as you rightly said, are vacant over the decades, I would say. We have been hearing last 5-6 years that lakhs and lakhs of posts of the academics in institutions of higher learning like IITs, they are vacant. Now, the reasons for not getting the candidates for the post of assistant professor to associate to professor, the people do not want to have migration from one place to another because everywhere people are getting good salary and there are no attractions to these higher positions in higher institutions, number one. Number two, since the posts are vacant, then naturally the proposals are not made for spending the money on this. Now, infrastructural development, mostly their building work is going on, so construction is going, but then academic research program, research projects of the huge amounts are not coming forward.
Okay.
There is a tendency of not utilizing funds for research and projects because number of posts are vacant, and those I am also told that proposals sent to the UGC, DST, CSR, the projects are not getting sanctioned last 2-3 years. And so allocation is not important. But then when you send a proposal, it is not getting sanctioned. Last year I found there were no proposals going from the academics, maybe because of the pandemic. But then the to the UGC is so small. Now they have reduced to the meager, hardly something like a 3 crore, which is against a huge amount. And then the overall education allocation is over 1,400 crores, but then it is not sufficient. But of which UGC is getting only 1,400 crore. That's too small amount. Again, when IITs have not spent the money, now again we find 27,000 crore allocation against that. UGC has to cater to so many colleges across the countries, then they get only 1,400 crore, means definitely.
Okay. So, Dr. Sawant, two things you're saying, I want to put it clearly out there so that we understand this. You're saying that, allocation is one thing, sanctioning of projects is another. So, when the proposals are given, those proposals have to get sanctioned, only then the fund can be utilized. So, part of the reason you're saying is because proposals have not got the requisite approval. But the other point you're making is that you're also saying that the way it is allocated is also not done in a fair manner. Is that what you're saying? That UGC, for instance, should get much more? Let me get your view in, Professor Chaudhary. Do you agree with that? That there is not enough mind applied to where the funds should be allocated? On paper, it may all look very good at the moment.
On paper, it's not that rosy. The new education policy proposed in 2020, on which a lot of noise and sound was done, actually brought in 6%, proposed 6% of the budget and the GDP for education. And both in 2021 and now 22, in all these years, the fund allocation is below 3% of the annual national budget. So 2020, 99,000 crores was given, only 85,000 was spent. 21, 93 crores. 1,000 crores were given, 7,000 lesser, 6,000 lesser. And as you have reported, 56,000 crores have only been spent. This time it has gone up 1.04, 1 lakh crores and more have been given, 11% hike. But going by the past, there will be a good amount of money not spent. So the important point is, on one side, recruitment is not being done. And it's not about that people don't want to change cities and not take jobs. They would be, but the recruitments are actually not going through. And secondly, while some real estate constructions are happening, but UGC's research particularly, and rightly told by Professor Sawant, that research allocations are not happening. Alongside, please understand, the digital divide is acute, which is creating learning loss. From schools to universities, there is learning loss.
Yes.
In 2020, UNESCO has said only 52% of the as much as 52% of the students of India did not have 1 ounce of education in 2020.
So what I understand, Professor Chaudhary, that some amount of these funds which are lying unutilized for whatever the difficulty is, like you said, there are issues with getting qualified candidates, those vacancies are not getting filled. Why is it not possible? And this is again from a completely layman's perspective, to redirect funds to where it is required. Can that system kick in, sir?
Exactly. Compulsory learning management system is required today. A blended education mode is required. Under such situation, bridging the digital divide, creating LMS, bringing in infrastructure, these require new investments which were not there in pre-pandemic period. In the post-pandemic scenario, the allocation of funds has to be there. I mean, put the money where the mouth is.
Okay,
So,
that's a fair point. Yes. That's a fair point. Let me put it out again. You know, the fact of the matter is what is coming out of this discussion is, yes, there is an allocation of funds happening, but under the wrong heads. Is that what you're arguing, Professor Chaudhary? Dr. Sawant, do you concede, do you agree that the allocation is happening under heads where utilization has got a lot of difficulty? It should rather happen on certain other areas which are starved for funds.
As Professor Chaudhary has said, 91 institutions recruiting the candidates against vacant posts, there are two high riders they are looking into, Looking at the system of education outside the best institutions, which are very few. Overall, generally, university educations and the infrastructure they learn into are hardly anything of the standard of international standard, where IITs like institutions are looking for candidates which are highly qualified to scholarly. It's not possible. As Professor Chaudhary has said, the blending has to be done. You take into the candidate who could be an average also, but has to be groomed into the system. That's not happening. That's why posts are remaining vacant. They are not ready to make a compromise. Secondly, the scholarship the students have been meager. They are not getting scholarship in the university, so that how can the student join for a PhD program? Now the scholarships, 50,000 crore, it was sanctioned last year. Now it has gone to merely 253 crores. I'm sure for that next few years, you will not get research scholars, because from 20,000 crore, you are brought down to 253 crore. It means you are not encouraging scholarship to the students under DST, CSR and UGC fellowships. So where the candidates will come from?
Okay.
Very well said.
So this is addressing the other issue, the issue of why the posts are lying vacant. Why are there so many vacancies? Dr. Sawant is explaining to us why that is happening. Yes, Mr. Chaudhary. Go ahead, Professor Chaudhary.
Yes, Afrida, I would like to point out, students require structured knowledge. And in structured knowledge, you do not require out-of-the-world intellectuals to teach them. Please understand, mentors are those who introduce the subjects. And for research, I understand. For higher research, you need extraordinary scholars, very high-level, brilliant, researchers. But for the learning purpose, teaching learning purpose, mentoring purpose, you need structured knowledge. And for that, the minimum qualification level, if crossed, reasonably good. And there is enough talent in the country for that. So not appointing is worse than appointing a reasonably good but not extraordinary person. So that's about appointment.
Yes, so let's now talk solutions. Dr. Sawant, how do we do the course correction then? We have identified the issues, but are you saying that the policy makers here in the HRD department are blind to these problems? Why is the course correction not happening? Why are the stakeholders like yourself not being consulted?
I think something has to be done drastically different in policy making. There have to be core educationists, scientists, researchers in policy making. It should not depend on the number game of coming from the bureaucracy, Now, as Professor Chaudhary has said, so GDP has gone down. See, number is 16,000 crore is not 16,000 crore is not a higher amount, we can say, but GDP by 3.54, it has gone down to 22-23, it is 2.64. Actually, by GDP, why it is 0.41%. Now, why government is not thinking to be very liberal, and at least 2 to 3% of the GDP has to be spent on higher education than the research? That's not happening. Years.
So who should now take responsibility for this, Professor Chaudhary? Who should take the onus for it? Because somewhere the buck has to stop somewhere. The government's figures, the fact of the matter is, this is government's own admission in Parliament that the funds are unutilized. But who is to be held responsible for this?
As
There is no
Dr.
facilitation.
Sawant,
Facilitation process has to be changed. Yes.
Okay. Professor Chaudhary?
as Dr. Sawant rightly tells, that decisions made only by bureaucracy will not help the cause of education. So first of all, allotment for UGC, allocation for UGC has to go up. And overall, first, the basic problem is that educational budget is below 3% of the total national budget and below 3% of the GDP. That's the basic problem. Whereas new education policy promises 6%. The second problem is fund allocation are at wrong places and on conditions which sometimes cannot be fulfilled.
Okay, that's a very important point.
True,
Okay,
true.
fund
third point,
allocation
and
is at
third
the
point.
wrong places and under conditions that cannot be fulfilled. Carry on, sir.
And third point is that you need to understand the post-pandemic reality is a blended education. I mean, I am talking to you through Zoom. This was not thinkable normally earlier.
Yes.
So post-pandemic situation is very different. So you need to bring in LMS in every institute of the government. Even private sector is already doing it, whatever might be their financial limitation. Second point, you need to create infrastructure or access to infrastructure or technology for the learners.
So there must be a rethink now. Clearly, the entire higher education system needs a complete overhaul. Like you said, to reinvent itself, to keep up with the times, with remote learning and distance learning being a reality. Thank you very much, Dr. A.D. Sawant and Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, for joining us this evening. Let's take a short break here. News and updates continue on the other side.